From halter tops to hoodies, from flip-flops to fleece. Such is the changeable weather of farming in Kentucky. Hi everybody, Mark Carey from Steepleview Farm. It is April. April showers bring May flowers. But boy, I'll tell you what, the weather this couple of weeks has been so changeable. Today is Saturday before Easter. Thursday, the temperature was 85 degrees and sunny. Last night, the temperature got down to just a little above freezing. No frost, raining. I mean, pouring down rain. Got up this morning, the yard is absolutely soaking wet, covered in water, but it's springtime. I mean, the dandelions are out, the violets are out, the red buds are beautiful, the apple trees have bloomed, my horseradish is doing great. Can you believe the way my asparagus has jumped? I just planted it the other day, you saw that. In addition to that, everything on the farm is beautiful. The lilac bushes, I mean, it's just springtime, but it's freezing this morning. It's not really freezing, but it's 39 degrees out here and very, very cold. And it's wet and it's windy and it's a very changeable time of the year. But I was lucky. I was just so lucky. Thursday with that warm weather, we were able to get out and put compost in the furrows that we dug out in the field for the purpose of putting in our first crop of potatoes. Used to raise potatoes back when my kids were little. Didn't really like the way they turned out. You know, the ground in Kentucky is mostly clay. Of course, as you probably have watched some of our videos, we're transitioning our farm this year. We're putting a huge effort into improving our soil. But the farm itself used to be mostly clay. And so the potatoes that I planted when the kids were little turned out to be just undiggable. They were in the ground and you couldn't get them out. I mean, it was like concrete. You leave them in all summer long and it was just like concrete. Of course, you're afraid to till around potatoes because you don't want to cut the tubers. So this year we went out in the field and we dug furrows, deep furrows, and then filled them with rich compost and planted potatoes right in the compost in the hopes that it'll have a soft soil for the tubers when they develop. And as we hill up around them, we'll be putting a little bit of dirt on top, but it'll all be mixed in with the compost. We're hoping it's going to be a good season for potatoes. Of course, if you haven't ever done potatoes before, here's a little bit about what I did before I put the potatoes in the ground. Hey guys, how are you? You're in a place that I don't ever take anybody. You're down in our old basement. Now, the story I heard about this house is that it didn't have a basement in the beginning, and they wanted a basement, and so they had to dig it out. So they lifted the house up and they used a team of horses and a scoop shovel behind the horses and they dug this old basement. I'm not going to show you the whole basement because like a lot of basements, it's kind of a wreck, but a couple of things kind of interesting down here. If you can see maybe right up here, see these are great big thick floor joists and there's nails hanging out of the bottom. And I'm told that they found an old house, well there was an old house on the farm, an old two-story brick house, and that the people who built this house scavenged the wood out of the old house. And so these are floor joists that have nails in the bottom, which is where they would have been up the other way, and there would have been a wood floor nailed to it. So it's kind of cool, really. I like it down here. It's got a lot of memories for me because this is the place that we used to before we had a pantry. This is where we used to store all of our food and all of our canned goods for the whole year when we were feeding our family. When our kids were little and living at home, this is where we kept all our canned goods. And so we didn't come down here much. Now it's got a furnace in here. So, you know, in the wintertime, it's a little warmer than a root cellar, but I guess it kind of serves a little bit of the same function as a root cellar. And tonight, what I'm doing is I'm down here in the basement doing something I've never done before. Well, I take that back. I have done this before. I'm getting ready to plant potatoes. And, I mean, I love potatoes. And I've always wanted to grow potatoes, but this part of Kentucky where I'm at, the soil is mostly clay. So even when you turn it up and you till it up and you get it nice and loamy, you plant your potatoes, and the next thing you know, you get a big rain and it packs down like concrete. I couldn't dig the potatoes. They didn't grow. They couldn't expand. But I've got a plan. So you're going to come along with us on Good Friday, which is by the old wives' tales. Now, don't forget, you know, most of what I do here is based upon old-timey ideas. And we put them into practice. Some of them work better than others. And some of them that work better are the ones I'm probably doing right. There's some I think that just don't work out as well. So, and the reason they don't work out as well is I'm maybe not doing them the right way. But we use old-timey methods. So one of the old-timey things is you plant potatoes on Good Friday. Just so happens this year, I've never really checked it before, but the Farmer's Almanac says Good Friday is a great day to plant root crops. So what am I going to do before I plant potatoes? Well, I didn't know. I mean, you know, here I am, 66 years old, been gardening and farming, you know, most of my life. My family all farmed before my dad. And we'll talk about that another time, but I never raised potatoes. Of all the things I've raised over the years, I raised potatoes, I think, 2 years, and it was just a disaster. So this year, I'm going to raise potatoes. I've been studying how to do it. Let me show you a couple things. So when you order your potatoes, they're usually going to come in a bag. You know what I mean? Just like get them at the store. These came from Johnny's, and they're called Gold Rush. They're gold potatoes, yellow potatoes, kind of like Yukon Gold, I think, a little bit. Supposed to be real disease resistant and really good potatoes, but they come in a bag. This one came in a paper bag, and this was 5 pounds. So you wonder how far 5 pounds will go. Well, according to everything I've read, 5 pounds of potatoes should plant about 25 feet. So 1 pound of seed potatoes should plant 5 feet. So 5 feet of a row. The rows are 3 feet apart. So 5 pounds, if 1 pound plants 5 feet, 5 pounds plants 25 feet. So I'm going to I built 2 beds. I showed you those just last week. 2 brand new beds filled with compost. Nice loose soil for potatoes. And I'm going to plant 25 feet, well, roughly 25 feet. I've got 2 12-foot beds. So, you know, we're fudging a little bit, but 25 feet of potatoes in those 2 beds. But the other thing I'm going to do is I was at a store the other day, and they had a 50-pound bag of Kennebec potatoes. I've heard so many good things about Kennebec potatoes, and so I bought 50 pounds of Kennebec potatoes. So if 1 pound plants 5 feet, this is 250 feet of potatoes. So we got to prep some soil. Now this time of the year in Kentucky, the soil is wet. I mean, we get a lot of rain, and it's very difficult to find enough dry days because any of you who farm, you know, or garden, you can't just till your soil. You can't just turn your soil. You can't just dig your soil when it's mud. You end up with mud balls that dry in the sun and they turn into bricks. So you don't want a big field full of clumps of brick. You don't want to try and be planting in dried clay. But we had a lot of rain the other day, and now the soil, today I tested it, still too wet. I'm hoping that tomorrow, and I'll show you a little bit how we're going to do that, but I'm going to show you how we're going to plow up the ground, and hopefully tomorrow it's going to be dry enough it'll be ready. But today we're not planting, today we're not tilling, but today we're getting the potatoes ready to plant. So let me show you what I've done. So 50 pounds of Kennebec potatoes came in this great big mesh bag, and they're beautiful looking potatoes, but as you probably know, seed potatoes, when you plant them, what you're looking for, either in the little bag from Johnny's or the big bag, is you're looking for these sprouts. You're looking for eyes. Each one of these little places will sprout and grow a potato plant. So what I did first was I went through and I sorted out all the potatoes, and I found the ones that are small enough that had a lot of eyes on them that I don't need to cut them. I'm going to plant this bin of potatoes, the Kennebecs, I'm going to plant these as whole potatoes. But they recommend that if you're going to cut a potato and get more than one piece out of it with an eye on it like this, that you cut them a few days in advance and let them sit out and let the surfaces dry. This reduces the risk of fungus getting on the potatoes when they're in the ground. So I've cut a bunch of the Kennebecs into pieces, and I've got them sitting on a tray over here where I hope they're going to dry enough that I can plant them on Good Friday. But I've got a lot more to cut. And then they say that you're supposed to take it and shake it up with some elemental sulfur. That also reduces the risk of fungus and so on. So before we take them out to plant, we're going to shake them up with some sulfur in a bag and hopefully give them a good head start on their way to becoming potato plants and a lot of potatoes to harvest later on this summer. So I've got another whole bin of potatoes right here that I need to cut and sit them out here in the basement where there's not really much going on. It's kind of a storage place now, but it's a good place to have my potatoes cut and drying, getting ready to plant. So this is exciting, something new for me and a whole new project. But you can learn with me along the way, and then, we'll see how it goes. In addition to putting potatoes in the furrows out front, we also put them in some raised beds that you saw me build the other day. And for those of you who've never planted potatoes before, a couple of tips. First tip, buy a good quality seed potato. Don't try to buy potatoes at the grocery store and put them in the ground. Most of the time they're coated with something that keeps them from sprouting, and sprouts are what make potato plants. So you want to buy good quality seed potatoes, number one. Number two, old farm lore says plant them on Good Friday. Certainly you want to plant potatoes that season of the moon where it's good to plant root crops, obviously. And put a little bone meal in the bottom of each of the places where you're going to plant a potato, whether it's a hole or in the fur or wherever. A little bone meal goes in there with it. That'll really help the potatoes get started. And then, of course, they're a 90 to 120-day crop. So plant your potatoes now in the springtime. Watch them grow. Cultivate them shallow. Cultivate them all summer long. When the tops die off in August, start digging your potatoes up and enjoy a rich harvest of potatoes all autumn long. And eat them when they're little. Grab a bunch of new potatoes and cook them up with some of your fresh green beans this summer. Nothing like taters. Well, anyway, thanks for being with me today. This is just a quick video. I'm cold. I'm going back in the house. I got a fire going, believe it or not. And we're going to get ready to celebrate Easter with our families. Happy Easter to all of you. Stay in touch with us at steepleviewfarm.net. And by all means, we hope to see you here.